Okay, in addition to all that, we got breaking news. General Motors announced sweeping layoffs today for its North American employees. Nearly 15,000 factory and white-collar workers are expected to lose their jobs. This restructuring plan will also shut 5 factories, 3 that produce cars for foreign markets: Lordstown, Ohio, Detroit Hamtramck, and Michigan. In Michigan, and the Oshawa, Ontario facility will be completely shut down in Canada. 2 powertrain plants in Baltimore, Maryland, and Warren, Michigan as well.
One of those factories, the Oshawa plant in Canada, employs 2,500 union employees and 300 salaried positions. All of those jobs are facing elimination. The town has been home to a General Motors manufacturing plant, get this, for over 100 years. It gives me the chills just to say that. Understandably, the community is very upset and prepared to fight for their plant. Ontario Assembly member Jennifer French says GM didn't build Oshawa. Oshawa built GM.
All right, joining us now, Bloomberg Auto reporter Keith Naughton. Keith,
am I mispronouncing it? Is it
Oshawa? Yeah, Oshawa. That's all right. You wouldn't know that.
I can't sit next to a Canadian.
It's a Toronto suburb, and it is known, for auto work. This is the heart of Canadian auto building. Keith, what do we know about these job losses and these plant closures? These are big numbers.
Yeah, they're very big numbers. 5 factories is a lot in one fell swoop. What's going on here is General Motors CEO Mary Barra is trying to get ahead of trouble. They're still making billions of dollars at General Motors, but the market is going down, particularly for the sorts of cars that are built to these plants, traditional sedans like the Chevy Impala. People aren't buying those anymore, so they're closing these plants and focusing more on sport utility vehicles and trucks.
Well, is it that they're eliminating these jobs or changing them? Because the president has spoken over and over about auto jobs coming back specifically to places like Ohio. I want to share what he said just last summer.
I rode through your beautiful roads coming up from the airport, and I was looking at some of those big, once incredible job-producing factories, and my wife, Melania, said, "What happened?" I said, "Those jobs have left Ohio. They're all coming back. They're all coming back. Coming back. Don't move. Don't sell your house. Don't sell your house."
So are there jobs coming back? Is he talking about something else?
Sadly, 4 of the 5 plants GM is closing are in the United States, including a very large one in Ohio. The United Auto Workers Union is furious over this, and they point out that GM is building trucks in Mexico and Buicks in China when they could be building them in the United States. So they are losing a lot of factory worker jobs here in the United States.
I just moments ago spoke with the Mexican economy secretary that's part of the outgoing government in Mexico, and he was sort of saying that he thinks the automakers' woes are steel prices due to tariffs as opposed to anything else.
Well, there certainly is a headwind from the tariffs President Trump has put on steel and aluminum. That is costing automakers billions of dollars in extra cost. But what's going on here is a big market shift. As gas prices have remained low, American consumers are buying the bigger vehicles, the SUVs, the trucks, and they don't want the cars that are built at these factories any longer.
In terms of these layoffs, is it simply that they are getting ahead of headwinds that are coming, or are they optimizing the company? And in terms of optimizing, changing strategies towards automation so they won't need as many workers? I mean, that'll have the same bad impact for factory workers, but it says something about the company and about the economy.
Certainly, GM is trying to make the company leaner and more profitable. What we're also seeing here is a shift toward the future. The 2 transmission plants that are closing are a harbinger of things to come, because the electric vehicles that GM wants to be selling in the future won't need these traditional transmissions. So more of those plants are going to be going. GM is trying to shift to a future that's electric cars and self-driving cars.
The Impala made in Oshawa, one of the things the president continues to argue about, he obviously doesn't talk about it as much now because the new NAFTA deal has been made, but he constantly threatens to shut off borders with Mexico. He talked about shutting the border completely so that cars don't come in. there are no Canadian cars and there are no Mexican cars. There are only American automakers that make those cars. Does GM protect itself by not having car plants in Canada from threats like that from the president?
You know, for Canada, unfortunately, they've become in North America the highest cost location to build a car. That's been working against Canada for some time, and they've been losing auto production over time as a result. With all of the trade actions that President Trump is already doing or is contemplating, really the safest place to build a car right now would be in the United States. That's where it will be the most tariff-free, but there are still very low wages in Mexico, very low wages in China, so General Motors is still chasing those as well.
All right, Keith, thank you so much. Keith Naughton from Bloomberg. Ali, what do you think?
I'm looking at Dow, at General Motors stock right now. It's up 5.7%.
Okay, so this is what's super important for our audience to see. When the stock of a company is up, remember what the stock is based on, right? Are customers buying?
Will that company make more money in the coming year?
And if they have layoffs like this, it could be a positive for the company. So please don't confuse how is the economy doing, how's the broader country doing, and the stock market.
Correct.
This is a good thing for the stock. But to those thousands of workers out there, for all of those that the president went to see, and he said, I'm going to bring jobs back when I create this massive corporate tax cut. Well, GM's dropping 15 grand jobs.
We saw a lot of this during the recession. I have been to each one of those plants, in Hamtramck, in Detroit, in Lordstown, in Ohio, which is very near Pittsburgh, and, of course, Oshawa. I grew up in Toronto. These are towns that are built around those plants. It's not the number of workers. So we're talking about 15,000 workers.
Remember, we saw that
plants.
with the Whirlpool plant, I want to say, in Ohio.
Shuts the place down. Now, look, in all of those places, there are other things around it. I'm actually more worried about the Ohio plant than Oshawa, because Oshawa is a Toronto sort of a suburb now. So there's other stuff going on economically. But the schools, the auto dealers, the pizzerias, the hairdressers, this is the thing you have to remember. When a plant shuts down, it's not losing a shift. In Lordstown, they went from 3 shifts down to 1 shift, and they built it back up to 3 shifts. When you shut down a plant, it is people's livelihoods. Try and sell a house in a town.
The value of their homes.
Try and sell a house, right? Your job's gone, so you need to move.
Okay.
But you want to sell your house, and everybody else is selling their house.
But what is Mary Barra's job then? To support those cities or to optimize her company?
Well, arguably, these blue-collar workers who built cars for the last 100 years have been supporting their cities. They've been supporting their companies. They have helped to build America. So there's some degree of obligation that we have to these workers who built our country.
But then the question is, when does that obligation become a priority for those CEOs? You and I have been on countless analyst calls when those companies report earnings. And the analysts are asking about customers. They're asking on behalf of their shareholders. They're not talking about the towns those factories
we know we're short of
in.
workers in this country, right? We've got more open jobs than we have workers. What we never do ahead of time is think about how to retrain them, right? What if everybody who got a pink slip today didn't get a pink slip? They got some plan about how they're going to be retrained and where they might live while they're retraining and what that'll cost.
Whose job is it to do that?
That's a very good question. Nobody in the Western world gets that right. Germany understands a little of it, but we don't. Whose job is that? It's a very, very important question for our time because much more automation is coming our way. That's the problem. Every job that we do in America will at some point get automated.
And whose job is it to address
Prepare for that. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.